We now move on to our fireside chat, which is all about women in Kargil. I think this is one that we're also looking forward to, which will be led by Dr. Renuka David. I would like to say a few words about her before I invite her to take the stage. Dr. Renuka David is an alumnus of the Coimbatore Medical College and the managing director of Radiant Medical Services. She provides holistic solutions for the prevention of non-communicable diseases, creating awareness towards leading a healthy lifestyle. Dr. Renuka is also a professional speaker, television show host, YouTuber, singer, and TEDx speaker. She has received several prestigious awards and was featured in the 100 Successful Women Entrepreneurs Engaged in MSME, released by the Union Minister Nitin Gadkari in a compendium by the FICCI Ladies Organization. A round of applause for Dr. Renuka David, who will lead this discussion. I now invite Ms. Raji Raju, past chairperson, FICCI Flow Chennai for the year 23-24, and the co-founder and director at Sthalam, regional board member of YPO, to do the honors and introduce the rest of our panel.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is an absolute honor for me to introduce the all-women panel for our fireside chat on the role of women in the Kargil War, led by Dr. Renuka David. It's an honor to introduce our first panelist, Dr. Ranjana Malik. Dr. Ranjana Malik was commissioned into the Army Medical Corps as a captain of Short Service Commissioned Officer in 1968. She married Major, later General, Ved Malik in 1968. After a 20-year career at ONGC, she dedicated her life to supporting the Indian Army. As president of the Army Wives Welfare Association, she expanded its reach and launched the AWWA journal and website. During the Kargil War, she spearheaded welfare efforts, ensured community involvement, and played a major role in communicating the Army community's experiences through media interactions. At present, she serves as an executive member of the Retired Defense Officers' Wives Association and maintains close ties with families of martyred soldiers. Let's invite Dr. Ranjana to the dais with your enthusiastic applause. I'm thrilled to introduce our next panelist, Mrs. Anitha Ravindranath. Anitha was born in Hassan, Karnataka in 1965 to parents Srimati Saroja and Sri N.P. Chandrasekhar. Grew up in Davangere, where her father was a professor of zoology. She studied in St. Paul's Convent and graduated from AVK College, did her B.Ed from Annamalai University, and years later did her B.Ed in Learning Disabilities. She married Captain Ravindranath, later Colonel, an infantryman in 1987, and stayed in different stations before settling down in Bangalore. They have two daughters, Prerna and Prarthana. For the last 12 years, Mrs. Anitha has been working as a special educator at Vimarsha Charitable Trust. Kindly welcome Mrs. Anitha to the dais with your applause. I am pleased to present to you our next panelist, Captain Yashika Hatwal Tyagi. Captain Yashika, an alumnus of the Officers Training Academy, Chennai, was the first woman logistics officer posted to the highest battlefield on earth, the Siachen Glacier. In 1999, she was the first woman logistics officer in Operation Vijay. Despite being in her second trimester of pregnancy, she fulfilled her duties, ensuring timely supply chain management. Let's bring Captain Yashika to the dais with a very warm round of applause. As Colonel said in his speech, among the galaxy of eminent speakers, it is my privilege to introduce the stars. Over to you, ladies. The stage is all yours.
The year was 1998. My husband was posted at Kupwara, fighting the insurgencies, and I was staying in SF Nandanam, Chennai, with my two very small children. And I remember being a mom and dad and try to humor them every day to keep our spirits up. And those days, I would never look at the leading newspaper at that time, Hindu, because every day, the front left corner, the front page, the first page, the left corner, bottom corner would always carry stories of our soldiers coming back in coffins, of widows, of, terrible stories. And I refused to look at that page. And what was my motivation? That one call from my husband, probably once a week or once in 3-4 days. And when the call came, I would run to the phone and I'd say, hello. And he would say, hey, Atikya Kupwara. Do you remember that song where Amir Khan does that Atikya Khandala many years back? So I would just, I would get so emotional. And so, Anitha, I'm sure we would share that whenever we send, our husbands leave us and go for fighting battles, insurgencies, war, there's that spirit of community and sisterhood which actually keeps us going. And there's always that feeling that, oh, there's another officer's wife who's there, maybe feeling sad, go and comfort her. And, there's always Jawan's wives looking after them. So we've always shared that spirit of community and sisterhood. And of course, during the Kargil, we all got together in some way or the other to volunteer under the leadership and mentorship of some very senior officers like Dr. Ranjana Malik, who did some amazing work behind the scene during the Kargil War. And we're going to discuss all that during the panel. And that was not it. Women played a greater role. For the first time, we had women officers serving at the forefront, fighting shoulder to shoulder with their male counterparts, taking part in the war. And that was not it. It's been such an amazing journey from there, because I think that was a big milestone. The 21st century saw a lot of women officers enroll in the armed forces. And what a journey it has been from women's service to today. We have our first batch of ladies officers training in the NDA. And soon they're all going to have their IC numbers. So that's such an amazing journey for women officers. So I think let's start our panel discussion. Ma'am, I would like to ask you the first question. As the president of AWWA, we'd like to know what are the activities that you did during the Kargil War?
Thank you, Dr. Renuka and Colonel David, for inviting me for this subject which really want to speak about. Let me tell you, I may be nervous because you are a whole lot of motivational speakers out here who've spoken a lot. But this subject about the role of AWWA during the Kargil War is very close to my heart. People ask me, not many people know what we did, but people ask me, what did you ladies do? Your husbands were fighting the battle. What did you do? It's so surprising that why we got accolades from all over the world, but in our country, people didn't know. And we had an organization which was already running. We had volunteers, because at the time of a crisis, you cannot begin from scratch. We had people who were out there helping people. So when the crisis began and the Kargil War began, we just had to step up our activities. First thing, in the hospital, the wounded soldiers started arriving. Any number of soldiers, they came from Kargil, they came from Udhampur, they came from 92 base hospital in Srinagar, they came to RR hospital, and they came to the base hospital in Delhi. People arrived, soldiers arrived in blood-splattered clothes. Their legs were shattered. They had abdominal injuries. Their eyes had splinters in them. And they were in a state of shock. So we went around from person to person, trying to allay the anxieties, trying to reassure them. We had to get them kurta pajamas. We got them shaving kits because they came straight from the battlefield. They had nothing, and there were no relatives around. As I went around, I would ask them, "Beta, aap kaise ho?" "Ma'am, hum bilkul theek hai. Humko वापस जाना है unit पे." So that Josh was, you can't believe that Josh. And you went around, you saw young soldiers, 19 years old, 20 years old, straight out of the recruitment centers. And they also had a question in their eyes that after this injury, what will happen to us? What is the future for us? So you had to tell them that if you get well, you will stay in the army. Otherwise, you might get boarded out. We did everything with our hands on their shoulders, speaking to each one. There was a young Naga boy who had 19-year-old boy who lost both hands. We couldn't speak with him. He didn't understand our language. So I got hold of two girls in one of our beauty parlors. They were Naga girls. I got them in the car. I said, "Please come and speak to this boy and explain certain things." Every day, our soldiers could not speak to their homes. They had no relatives there. There were no telephones. There were no cell phones. I had to beg some of the civilians to come to the hospital in the evening with their phones so that we could connect these soldiers to their homes. I spoke to any number of people. I got endolite limbs, videos sent to all the hospitals so that these soldiers could see that with prosthetic limbs, how will they be able to function? What sort of activities can they do? This went on day after day, day after day. And there were some people, I must tell you, who stayed in the hospital for over a year. Their wives were given a place in the military hospital, in the base hospital, and they stayed there. And we managed to get help from people. We got 50,000 blankets. One of the organizations had gave me Frigidaires, air conditioners, which I sent to all the hospitals. And we would pass an Asha card to each one of them, telling them कि आवा की शुभकामनाएं, आप अपने काम में सफल हो. And then the next thing came, when the dead bodies started arriving, they started coming to that special airport. And you can imagine the unprecedented pouring of grief of those ladies. Our ladies stood by them with our arms around these people, giving them support, giving them help, because no relatives were there. Later on, the bodies were taken to the hometowns, because this is the first time that the bodies from battle, they were sent to the hometowns where they got a lot of support. But at the time they reached Delhi, there was nobody. So we had our ladies holding on to these women who had just lost their husbands, and the bodies were arriving in. in bags. And then there was this major question. There was such a large number of our ladies staying in what we call the field area family quarters. You mentioned SF quarters. We changed the name from separated family quarters to field area family quarters, which I thought was more respectable. Because once one lady told me that she wanted to come in an auto to her house. So the auto man asked her, "Oh, jithe chhaddiyan hoiyan aurtaं rehndiyan." So I thought that was not correct. So we made a decision to change the name to field area family quarters. And I was the one who changed the name of the widows to Veer Naris. We call them Veer Naris because we want to give them a lot of respect. I went every day, and not only me, I must compliment all the volunteers who were with me, who were willing, whether they were working ladies, whether they were not working ladies. They managed their time, they came with me. We went to these field area family quarters, officers' quarters, wars quarters, because these were the ladies whose husbands were fighting the battle. They're watching on the television, they're watching the news, and they know what is happening, and they can't hear from their husband. They would ask, so we would say, okay, maybe we can get some information from Northern Command. But we met them every day, to tell them, fikar nahi karo, sab theek ho raha hai, sab aa jayenge, wapis aa jayenge. And we would look after the children. We took them out on outings. We helped with their studies because these ladies, so much of fear, so much of anguish, so much of apprehension, they were not in a state to do anything. And then we had to make a connection with those ladies whose husbands had lost their lives. That was a very emotional task. It was a very difficult task to approach them. And some of these young girls were barely married. Barely married. They had hardly lived with their husbands. And the husbands had gone to battle. So when I went to their homes to meet them. I would find hordes of relatives peering from all the doors to see what I was telling them. What I was telling them about financial benefits. What I was telling about where they will stay. Because for a young girl, just married, she has no idea. And I must tell you now, 25th year of Kargil, when I was there, and I met so many of these young girls who came running to meet me. This is how nice it was to meet me because I was the first person. But all of us, we were the first people who went to them. And then some of them, I had to call them to my office so that I could explain to them what was going to happen. And we had been pleading with the Prime Minister that the most important thing is that they should be given a place to stay, a dwelling unit, which is, we don't think about that, but other than money and all that, or a pension, what is important is the dwelling unit. And in that particular year, Prime Minister Bajpai, he convinced me that we will give the best in terms of wheelchairs, best in terms of artificial limbs. And they created a colony for these Veer Naris. And that colony is there. It's called the Kargil Nivas. And it's there in Dwarka, in Delhi. And just, I think, last year, we went and had lunch with a whole lot of Veer Naris of the Kargil War who are living there. And now when I met them at Kargil, they said, "Madam, aap kab aa rahe ho dobara hamare sath khana khane ke liye?" So this is just some of the things. I can go on, but I know you have a time limit, so I'll carry on later. Thank you.
Anitha, one army officer's wife to another. Tell me, how is it to be married? Was it to be married to this officer, your husband, who's going to be called at any point of time to a war or insurgency or battle? How has that journey been?
Thank you, Renu, for calling me here. Today, I sit here in front of you as a proud army officer's wife. But when I married Ravi, that thought didn't cross me that he will be called to a war because the last we had was in 71 and I was a kid that time. So for me, I married Ravi as a person who I wanted to be with. And that came later during Kargil. The fear, as you said. Till then, it was just administrations, move, your family life, separation, all that. The fear factor, I think everybody will have it. In each individual goes through that fear, whichever field they are. But for an army officer's wife, it is, yeah, if there are situations like borders, it's a bit more, I can say, than for the civilians. Uncertainties are lots, whether he'll be with you, whether we can talk. Yeah, I'm talking about my married days, which there were no mobiles those days, when he was in the army, and no connections, no landlines. The only way of communication was letter writing, which took days to reach us, and my reply and took again days to reach him.
And the
And by
trunk call and the lightning call?
Lightning call only happened for me during the Kargil, where he could get hold of one satellite phone if he was lucky. Otherwise, we didn't have any communication. By the time I got his letter, I would have forgotten what my question was. It was that sort of thing. And like, kids were small, what happens if I have to change their school, move? What happens if somebody is sick in the family? How do I contact him? All that. There were a lot. And the joys, I think, outweighs everything. The thing is, like, you want to be with that person is the most thing we all look forward to. The warmth, the friendship, the support we get in this organization is way beyond everything. Like, today I'm sitting in front of you, I think because of that. And thank you so much for connecting.
Yashika, at the time you decided to join the army, I mean, you were among the first batch of 100 ladies, women cadets who joined it. I think you were number 77, if I'm not wrong. So what was the impetus? What made you want to join the army? And second, how has this journey been?
Thank you so much, Dr. David, Colonel David. Because of you, I breathe in this air today, and I sit among legends. This is very overwhelming for me. Thank you so much. What was my impetus to join army? I was just 7 years old, daughter of an infantry officer. His body coming back home in a Fauji 3-ton, all laid with marigold flowers. And we did not know what has happened. My mother was in and out of consciousness for days. Today I sit here because of stalwarts like Dr. Ranjana Malik. I'm product of AWWA. I'm product of Indian Armed Forces. And I'm so proud to belong to this organization because I saw extreme examples of humanity here. When my father died, I did not know what is army because I was just 7 years old. But as I grew, I knew I want to be like these people in uniform. But army was not there on cards when I was growing up. So I wanted to be Kiran Bedi. People of my generation, women of my generation would know what a danda man she was. And I wanted to be that danda man. I wanted to wear a uniform. So Kiran Bedi was the role model, started preparing for civil services. And Mr. Shabir Boxwala here would relate to it with the entertainment industry. When Shah Rukh Khan says, किसी चीज को आप बहुत शिद्दत से चाहोगे तो कायनात उसे आपके लिए लेकर आएगी. So I was at the right place, at the right time, at the right age. I completed my graduation, and it was about that time that I saw a clip on the newspapers that said, first batch of women officers passes from academy. Poof! अब मुझे IPS officer नहीं बनना था. I wanted to wear olive greens. And that is how I came into armed forces. And this is power of an army wife. Again, I'll go back to Dr. Ranjana Malik's strength, that this lady who had not even completed her education, my mother had not even completed her BA when she got married. And when my father, we lost him, after that, she worked very hard for her daughters. The elder sister, she became a doctor, MBBS, MD, worked with naval hospitals, got married to a naval officer. I came into army, got married to an army officer. My youngest sister is a serving Air Force officer, married to an Air Force officer. And this is Indian Armed Forces. This is AWWA. Thank you so much.
I got teary by your. Ma'am, tell us some interesting incidents. I remember when we were having a conversation, you're telling about some mithai, you must tell us that.
Well, as I said, I wrote to every commanding officer. I sent a card. Sent a card to every Subedar major of every unit which was fighting the war. At some stage, I thought that let us send some sweets to our soldiers who are fighting a battle there. And so we chose some perishable, non-perishable, nutritious mithai. And I told the ladies, I said, just don't get them packed like this. Put a handwritten personal note with each dabba of mithai and say that AWWA is wishing you all the best for what you do and we want you to succeed. So those packages were sent 5,000 at a time by the Air Force planes every week. Every week these packages went. And then the replies started coming. They were so interesting because some officers wrote to me also. But most of the men, they did not know what is AWWA. They had no idea. So the letters went to Kaleva Sweet Shop. They went to this house. They went AWWA manager, AWWA this thing. And finally those letters came to me. But I wouldn't be able to complete the story if I didn't read out at least 2 of those letters. They are the most...
Help, ma'am.
These are the letters on the Air Force, on the forces letters. Says, respected AWWA member, हम सभी अपनी जगह पर ठीक रहते हुए आपके ठीक रहने की कामना करते हैं. अब नेक्स्ट न्यूज़ इस प्रकार की है कि मैं 21 पैरा स्पेशल फोर्सेस का एक जवान हूँ और अभी कारगिल में हूँ. जब हम कारगिल की पहाड़ियाँ चढ़ रहे थे तो अचानक हमें आपका दिया हुआ गिफ्ट मिला. तो मुझे इतनी खुशी हुई कि मानो जैसे मेरे घर से मिठाई का पैक आया हो. मैंने ये पैक खोलकर देखा तो उसमें मिठाई निकली. जबकि हम पहाड़ियाँ चढ़ते चढ़ते थक गए थे, चूर हो गए थे, तो मिठाई खाई तो हमें फिर से जोश की उमंग जाग उठी और हमने फिर बर्फीली पहाड़ियाँ चढ़े और अपने काम में विजय पाई. मैं आपको इस गिफ्ट के लिए सदा आभारी रहूँगा कि हमें भी याद करने वाले कोई हैं. अगर इस तरह आप याद करते रहेंगे तो हम कठिन से कठिन कार्य करने में सफल हो जाएंगे. फिर हमारे आगे पाकिस्तान तो क्या, चीन है. कार्यरत कर्मचारियों को हमारी तरफ से नमस्ते. हम आपका ये एहसान कभी नहीं भूलेंगे. आप लेटर का अति शीघ्र जवाब दीजिए. आपके लेटर की मैं इंतज़ार में. आपका सैनिक राजेश. He was from 21 Special Forces Para. But there's another more interesting one. आपके आदरणीय my dear AWWA, और this letter has gone to 109 बंगला साहब रोड, गोल मार्केट. आपके प्रिय साथियों को, सैनिक भाइयों की तरफ से नमस्कार. हम भारत माता की चुम्बी पर राजी खुशी से रहते हुए ईश्वर से आपके खुश रहने की कामनाएं करते हैं. हम यहाँ पर देश की रक्षा कर रहे हैं. हमें आपकी भेजी हुई AWWA की मिठाई मिली. हमने और हमारे सैनिक भाइयों ने AWWA की मिठाई खाई. मिठाई खाकर हमें काफ़ी जोश आता है. आप इस तरह मिठाई भेजते रहो तो हम लाहौर तो क्या, इस्लामाबाद पहुंच जाएंगे. आप लोग निर्भय होकर रहो. हम आपके व अपने देश की रक्षा करेंगे. जब तक LC लाइन क्रॉस नहीं करते तब तक हम चैन की सांस नहीं ले पाएंगे. हम उनको ऐसी सीख सिखलाएंगे कि उनको सपने में भी याद आएगी कि इंडिया व इंडियन आर्मी कुछ है। भाई व बहनों, तुम खुश रहो। हमारी तरफ से हम तुम्हारे खुश रहने की कामना करते हैं। आपको पत्र मिलता है तो पत्र में पूरा एड्रेस देना, पत्र जल्दी देना। दिस इज फ्रॉम सुनील शर्मा, एक कंपनी 6 पैरा।
Ma'am, read the date also.
21/7/99. So I used to tell my husband that for a soldier who's sitting out there, एक कहता तोलोलिंग पहाड़ी पे बैठा, एक ने कहा पहाड़ियों पे बैठा, और आप देश में निश्चय होकर रहिए, आप निर्भय हो रहिए, हम रक्षा कर रहे हैं. I used to tell my husband that these are your ACRs. If a soldier sitting out there can speak with such josh, it means all is well with the Indian Army. You know, and as I tell you, when we were speaking of going to the hospitals, both my husband and I went one day to see Yogendra Yadav. He was so badly injured. He had God knows how many bullet wounds. The young boy and a young wife next to him got married very young. I met that lady now and she was jumping to meet me and said, I will come to your house. And when my husband told him कि तुम्हें परमवीर चक्र मिल रहा है, that boy didn't know. He didn't know what is परमवीर चक्र, कि उसका मतलब क्या है. You know, straight out of their centers they had come and they had fought this war with such gallantry, as everyone knows कि योगेंद्र यादव परमवीर चक्र वो कैसे. उसको जब बताया गया कि तुमको परमवीर चक्र मिला, उसको कुछ मालूम नहीं था. That is one. Then there was in one of the other, as we talk of media and the power of media, and I try to reach out to everyone through the media so that people know what is happening, and also the army wives also must know what is happening. I spoke with Bartha on one of her channels, I spoke on ZTV, I spoke on Doordarshan, and I reached out. I did rediff chat shows with people all over the world. I spoke on a radio set in Pennsylvania. People wanted to speak. I went to the president's house. Mrs. Narayanan, Usha Narayanan, wanted to know what we were doing. And Mrs. Suman Krishnakant, who was the vice president's wife, she had called heads of 40 women's organizations, and she wanted me to tell them what we were doing. But I think the biggest compliment I got was from Mrs. Mohini Giri. Mrs. Mohini Giri, daughter-in-law of an earlier president, V.V. Giri, she had been actively involved with the War Widows Associations after 65 war and 71. So she came to me. She said, Mrs. Malik, मैं जब पहले आती थी ना, I was very disturbed कि सब ठीक नहीं हो रहा. But I can say that you have got everything under control. And I think we reached out to everyone. And I continue to reach out to all the ladies, all the families I know even today. Whichever station we visit, we find out if there is a soldier's family staying there, we go and meet them. It is a regular routine. In one of the newscasts on the television, there was a news of one AMC doctor, maybe of the second Rajrif, Major Basu. He got injured. And the news said that he has been admitted in hospital. So his sister, who was working in, who was in Singapore, she was paranoid. You know, she rang up. She rang up army headquarters. She said, how can I find out about my brother? So we sent a message to Basu in 92 Base Hospital in Srinagar. And his reply came. He said, please tell my sister, today is her birthday, and I want to wish her all the best. So this is the power of communication, you know, or reaching out. And because media was covering things and it was going across, people got to know what was happening.
So, Anitha, we know Colonel Ravindranath as the Tolulink hero and the person where, as General Mohinder Puri had just mentioned before that was the turning point for the victory of Kargil, his capture, his unit's capture of Tolulink. But let's rewind. Tell us a little story about how it all started between you and him. We know about him as an army or decorated and a very brave soldier. But tell us about where it started between both of you.
Ma'am, to start with, his younger sister was my schoolmate. That's how I met him. Like, met him, I remember in 1980, he had just come down after his NDA. Didn't give much attention because, as it is, I was a kid. Then, years later, he proposed. And I was okay with it because
He
I
was
liked
nice
him as-
looking, he was good looking,
Yeah.
he had a good voice, those days.
Yeah. And I knew the family members. I used to visit them often. But my parents and grandparents were dead against it. Ye Fauji se, he's from the army. And for a civilian, I'm completely civilian background, typical South Indian who doesn't know anything about army. For them, army was like khate pite like they drink and my grandfather's dialogue, khate pite. And they fight in the borders and very risky. Yeah, as a typical parents, they were worried about it. But I was adamant and somehow it worked out and that's the story. Sorry.
Nice to see you blushing. Nice to see you blushing, Anita. Yashika, you've constantly volunteered for challenging postings. I think from Operation Rhino in Northeast to being the first woman officer to be posted at high altitude area of Leh. But interestingly, when Kargil broke out, we hear that you were 2 months pregnant. I mean, you were in your second trimester, and you still insisted to stay there and not, use that as an excuse to go back home or say you are not fit enough. You still stayed on. So tell us a little about that.
That is a done thing. That was a done thing. I am trained in Officers Training Academy. I'm trained on the same parameters. मुझे भी सिखाया गया है एक गोली एक दुश्मन. मैंने भी वही ट्रेनिंग ली है. I can, now that you say it, I am thinking about it because I have, it never crossed my mind that I can say that, please. Rather, the thought came from my commanding officer who told me that I can take a permission from Army headquarters and get you posted to a peace location because you are in your second trimester. And mind you, since I was the first woman officer in that area, we did not have a gynecologist in our military hospitals. And it was not only this, I was already a mother of 3-year-old child. So holding him, being pregnant, husband sent forward to Dras. It was like video game where levels were constantly rising. It was so sudden, the war just started without any warning that I could not send my elder child back home. That was the only thought that came to my mind, that if I can, I should send him back home. But we did not have time for that. So I said, now we'll have to do with what we have. And the only request I made to my commanding officer was, sir, please allow me to keep him with me when I am in office. Because way back in those days, Leh did not have electricity, we had generators. And during a situation like this, we were told to avoid having lights, after it is dark. So my child was there with me, and for days to end, I remember for 7 days straight at one point of time, I did not go back home. And this child who was speaking to everyone around just knew कि हमें मोर्चा कैसे खोदना है, हमको लड़ाई लड़नी है, हमको जीतना है. In his own तोतला के आवाज, हम पाकिस्तानी से जीतेंगे, हम मोर्चा खोदेंगे. And that is what that is taking defenses. And he knew what a 2-man trench looks like. So it did not occur to me that I have any option, neither did I want to exercise any option. Uh, High altitude pregnancy, it is very imperative for me to share here, is very different from what it is in plains. Because of the rarefied air and less oxygen, your body is working on a very rare commodity that is less oxygen. What you are told to eat in peace areas or in plains have lot of iron, have iron-rich diet, have iron and folic acid tablets. I was told not to eat any of that, not to consume it, because my body will not be able to convert it. Rather, it needs more oxygen to convert it into, I'm not a doctor, so I'll not be able to put it into medical terms. But the only thing was told to me was, you may self-abort your child. Now, सोने की तो कोई बात ही नहीं है, रेस्ट भी नहीं था, खाना भी नहीं था, mental, you are buzzing at some different frequency. You are so focused on a higher goal that you just leave everything. I was a wife. I was thinking about my husband, who was in a very difficult area. I had this child with me, and I was pregnant, and I had absolutely one responsibility कि आपने जब वर्दी पहनी है तो आप सिर्फ भारतीय सेना के सोल्जर हैं, आप और कुछ नहीं हैं. And I think that is the only thing that stayed with me throughout, and leaving that area never occurred. And 25 years back, this photograph that you see is just taken about 20 days back. I was back at Kargil. And when I saluted in this memorial, it just gave me the thought that how right I was to be there, and how I did all that I could. And all these young women, officers, to be officers from Officers Training Academy that I sit here, I have opened way for them. After Kargil, many things changed for girls. From women's service scheme, earlier it was actually, I beg your pardon, sir, for saying this, Malik sir. But when we started taking girls into army, we were called Women's Special Entry Scheme. And you know what is a scheme? Chali chali, nahi chali to dabbe mein band. Everybody wanted to try lady officers, how much they can do. But I'm so glad that me and my tribe, we actually gave our sweat and blood for the nation, that it was converted over, it took some time, but then the entry levels were same. We had to give CTS, and then SSP, and then SS, that is Short Service Commission. And then women have now started commanding their units. Oh my God, and that first batch in National Defense Academy. This tribe of mine has done me proud, and this salute is for them.
Amazing journey. मैम चलो आप बता दो, हाउ डिड यू मीट जनरल मलिक? आपने अभी कंप्लेन किया ना, हमसे तो नहीं पूछा आपने, तो अभी आप बताइए, हाउ डिड यू मीट हिम?
पहले कुछ और आर्मी वाइफ्स के बारे में बताऊंगी. The biggest change we did in the army for women was when two young ladies who had lost their husbands in war, in an ambush in J&K, and one in a helicopter crash in the Northeast, they walked into my office, in the AWWA office, and said, Mrs. Malik, we have been told that we will get our husband's full pension forever. But we do not want this pension. We want to do something for this army for which our husbands gave their lives. Now, we had never even heard of a thing like this. I was astounded. Both these ladies had a young child each, a year-old child, So I said, if you join the army, you cannot ask for any favors. You cannot ask to be posted because you have a young child. But they stood firm. They were quite determined to become army officers, commissioned officers in the army after they lost their husbands. And that was a first. And when I approached my husband, there was no rule for that. And he spoke to the defense minister. And it so happened that in a matter of 1 month, the sanction came through. And those girls went into the OTA. The first commissioned officer, Ravindrajit Randhawa, have you met her? And that was the first instance in the world. No Indian army, no army in the world had commissioned officers. That started the chain. And in my time, we commissioned 8 officers, 8 lady officers as commissioned officers, those who were widows. They were widows, Veer Naris we call them. And now her daughter has written a book called Cost of War, which you spoke about. But another story I'll tell you about a lady. She was just married for 2 months. And she married an artillery officer. And within 2 months, by the time she joined the artillery regiment, he was posted to Kargil. So she was alone. And he took part in 3 important actions there, including Tololing and this and that. And he was brought back to Delhi because his arm had been blown off. So this girl came to see her husband and was abused by the mother-in-law, कि तुमने ये नहीं ठीक किया, वो नहीं ठीक किया, तभी your husband has got these injuries. That gentleman, of course we met them then, we met them in the hospital as we went to see everyone. That lady remained in the hospital for 1 year. And another one I met just now whose husband's legs were amputated. 1 year she stayed in that one room. And then he was not satisfied. They wanted to give him a desk job, but he was not satisfied. So she persuaded, she was a technical graduate, she was a techie. She persuaded him to do MBA from Faculty of Management Studies in Delhi. He topped that exam. And then he was offered job by 2-3 organizations, including Airtel and something else. But he said, I don't want a job as a sympathy thing. I will take a job when people hire me on my competence. And he's now working with the Tatas. He's a senior, he's become senior. He's professionally so competent that the organization sent him and his wife to South Africa as a trip, holiday trip. And this lady, she has written a book. And that book is called Nation First. And I think this is the first book written by the wife of an officer who fought the battle. And she describes that battle in his words. What happened where, what happened, because all other books have been written by relatives who've described, who've learned from so-and-so, aise hua. But this lady, she describes every action as described to her by her husband. That officer is in much demand now. He's giving lectures all over. And I'm very proud because that book is a compelling read. It is a compelling read. And I was quite fascinated when I read that here is this lady who's spoken about her husband after his being in hospital for 1 year and how well he's doing now.
Yes, ma'am. I think we have a picture, Neeti, of that book with the artillery officer. I think we do have
There was a picture.
a picture. Yeah, that's the one. Is that the one?
This is Ravindrajit Randhawa.
The one before? Is this the one? That's the one.
This is
yeah.
the one. She's Shikha Saxena, Akhilesh Saxena, and her husband is Akhilesh Saxena. And that other one was with Ravindrajit Randhawa. And I mean, these women have proved, and this Ravindrajit Randhawa has completed 20 years of service as a commissioned officer after being a Veer Nari, and she is now superannuated. And she's living in Mohali, and I'm very proud of her, really. and the others.
So I think we are running short of time, but I'm going to quickly wrap up the panel with the last few questions. Coming back to Kargil, Anitha, when Kargil War started, I mean, we didn't have mobiles, we didn't have the latest technology that we have today. How did you actually hear about that, his unit is going to Toluling, and we read the book, we got to know his perspective of what went through him when he was told to go and, go to capture Toluling back. But as a wife, you had two very young daughters. So what was that initial reaction? Like, was there fear or was there, what went through your mind at that time?
Renu, as they say, ignorance is bliss. Sometimes it was really, for me, the first half of the war, I didn't know his unit was in the thick of it. As far as I was concerned, he was posted in Kupwara, and I was supposed to go to Srinagar to meet him. He said he'll take some leave and meet me in Srinagar, fly there. And we're all set. I was at my hometown, Davangere, and 25th of May, got a call, a quick call saying, don't start. I was to start on 27th of May. It was my younger daughter's birthday, so we said, okay, we'll celebrate it at home, then we'll start the journey. And that's all. He said, I can't say anything more, don't start. And next day I went to the railway station. I was traveling by Jhelum to Jammu. I stood at the counter and I was so hesitant to hand over my tickets, but I was eagerly looking forward. I had not met him for a few months. And my kids were all ready with their toys and the stories to tell them. And I kept asking that station master there, I said, if I hand over my tickets, the confirmed tickets, those days were very, very rare, especially during the holidays. I said, can I get it back again? Can I reserve it? Because I didn't know the situation. It was really like, I said, why is he telling me this? So that's how the first inclination was there. Then World Cup was happening. Being a fan of World Cup, so I was just watching news for some time and watching cricket. And then the airfield was shut, the Srinagar airfield, one by one. Then the situations, like it started sinking in that, yeah, situation is bad in our country. And till 14th of June, I didn't know what was happening with his unit. There was no communication. 14th afternoon, I got a call saying, there will be a newscast in the evening news, because he knew I regularly watch news. There will be a news on that unit. Major Vivek Gupta is martyred. And don't panic. That's all. Then that day changed everything for me. That was the time, like for them, for me, I knew he was somewhere in the periphery, but not in the field. And after that, as my younger daughter was 6 years old, she says, the only thing I remember during those days is Mama sitting in front of the TV and telling that Papa is at the borders fighting enemies. So that's how we came to know about this. And it was a bliss because we didn't have mobile phone for me.
So my last question to all my three distinguished panel, I will start with you. Yashika, you said gender discrimination doesn't matter. So could you tell me more about that?
I am a living proof of that gender just does not matter. What matters is your competence. Whether you can do your work in the way it is supposed to be done, and your only hallmark is the way you conduct yourself, the way you produce results, the way your efforts are honest. It just does not matter, especially in my organization, whether you are a man or a woman. I will tell you, just now we went around the journey of women officers into Indian Army. And the women coming into NDA, it is going to open a whole lot of opportunities for them. Many things must be changing. So it's going to be not just NDA, but it is then going into Air Force Permanent Commission and Naval Permanent Commission and Army Permanent Commission, all coming with their IC numbers. Gender is a bias if you take it as a bias. Of course, many people will disagree with me, and I have faced it also firsthand. I was not just taken with a red carpet rolled on for me. Gender bias has been real. It takes time for you to prove your mettle. I have proven it. Not just once, twice, thrice. And I am so proud to belong to an organization which teaches you that a bullet will never differentiate whether you are a man or a woman. Your bullet is not going to differentiate. And I'm so proud of it that at the end of Operation Vijay, I had the same 2 medals twinkling here. Same 2 stars. I had a battle report which was, beg my pardon, I'm not known for my humility, which was better than many of my male counterparts. I'm so proud to be the first lady officer to have earned a battle report. So, gender just does not matter, competence does, and I always say that may God grant me that much life. Allow me to live to see that day when we have a whole squadron of Rafales, not just 1 or 2, but a whole squadron of Rafales being flown by women fighters. I want to see the nuclear submarine of Indian Navy being commanded by a woman naval officer. God just give me that life to live to see that a whole post of Siachen is not manned by a woman, but being womaned by a woman. May we have a squadron of armored tanks. आप imagine करिए वो राजस्थान के सैंड में धड़धड़ाते हुए टैंक निकल रहे हैं, and all with women. My God, just God give me that much life to live and see that day, and I'm sure that day will come.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Ma'am, your parting words as a president of AWWA. Today, AWWA is doing a lot of work. What would you say about the present
You see,
AWWA?
in the last so many years that I've been out of the army, AWWA has evolved. Over the years, it has evolved. People are different. They're educated. They're careerists. Even the OR's wives, they're very well educated. So, and there's no war on. So we have to think ahead. We are wanting to create opportunities for them to be able to do well in whatever they're doing, whether they're entrepreneurs, whether they're artists. We are giving them opportunities. We are giving them courses as special counselors, as educators, and we've started an AWWA Lit Fest. And this first Lit Fest was held in Jaipur, then Pune, then I think Lucknow, and this year it's going to be Chandimer, Mandir, because so many of the ladies are now writing. They're authors, and they want their books to be discussed.
Barkha, your answer.
They want to be discussed. You know, they want their books to be discussed. So over the years, the AWWA has evolved. You know, and I keep track of what they're doing through their AWWA website and the Facebook, whatever the chief's wife, she writes, President AWWA. I'm not actively involved with them now, but I do comment, and I'm very happy to see how they're going about it. And when the situation arises, well, you have to have all your resources to get going. When the going is tough, you have to get going.
Thank you, ma'am. Anitha, final word from you. There are a lot of women, a lot of people who are watching us online, and there are definitely women who are sending out their husbands onto battles, manning young, their home, their household, looking after little children, being the both parents and also having a very brave front of their kids. What's going to be your advice to these women out there?
The first thing is be patient. And patient, when I say patience, it means that listen to what you're meant to. Like, everything cannot be shared with you. Especially I'm talking about people who are in the borders. Like, some things, like I came to know, don't start the journey. I didn't have any means of asking him why, because I didn't have a phone those days. These days, click of a button, you want all the answers. But sometimes it cannot be given. So be patient, listen to reasons maybe later, and bit of compromise. When I say compromise, not being a doormat, but you have to, especially in the army, you have to compromise sometimes. Otherwise, you just can't be an army officer's wife. And the next thing is, don't compare yourself to anyone. Please don't compare. Here, somebody, especially this happens, I've seen in people like, SF, what was the new name you told me? Not the SF, field area families. Yeah, there's a lot of competitions happening there. Okay, they bought this, they bought that, and I want that, and pestering their husbands, and it's not done. And mainly compromise and patience, because recently somebody narrated a story of a officer who had a tussle with his wife, and she refused to talk to him day in. Every day he was tasked of laying of mines. He used to come talk to her. She refused to talk. Again, he went out. Next day, same thing happened. And this incident happened, I don't know where. It was told to me by another coastmate's wife, his coastmate. And he was so distracted that day when he went out. He was laying the mine, and he was blown up.
He was blown up.
Yeah, he was blown up. That's just, I don't know where it happened, but it happened. So please, if you're watching this, be patient and listen to your hearts. And there's nothing greater than compromising, especially in situations like war. Yes.
One, reach out to all the people, wherever they are, whether they are our soldiers, whether they are the wives who've lost their husbands for the nation. Reach out to them. Let them feel that their husband's sacrifice has not been in vain. You know, we want them to feel proud of their husbands. We don't want any bickering between them. So wherever we go, and as far as possible, I like to keep in touch by letter, by phone, and whenever we go to any station. And I tell the ladies that when you go home on leave and you see there are other families who've lost their husbands, reach out and see what you can do for them. It's not only for the government to look after our families. They're our families, and it's for us to look after them. And I think that we have to develop this attitude of doing whatever we can for others.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you, Anitha. Thank you, Yashika. I think you'll all agree with me that this was just not some panel discussion. It was very emotional, and it was very touching and moving. And I hope, especially for our civilian audience, that you got a glimpse of what a woman faces, especially when a husband is sent to war or an insurgency or a battle, or how a woman officer deals with her personal life when she is facing a very big challenge in her life. Thank you so very much for your patient hearing.
A big thanks once again to our entire panel, and I'd like to call upon Mrs. Soumya Anbumani along with Colonel David to please present our panel with the token of our appreciation.
Well, after listening to such iconic women, Renu and I, we were thinking as to who's that one iconic woman who's from a non-military background, who can who can have the honor of felicitating them. So both of us jointly thought of Dr. Soumya Anbumani. And in the army we are taught, though with all due respect to Dr. Tharoor, that no, never go behind a horse and in front of a politician. But Dr. Soumya Anbumani is cut from a different cloth. Her father, I mean, if you just look at the way that they are, it's been a life of service. From the time she's a child, I mean, yeah, a lot of people from the Tamil community, the Chattapavade, from that time onwards, it's been service. And to the people. And she has always been without any kind of political ambitions. And now, once this last time, and that to Dharmapuri, now this time of the year, they work so hard. There's so much, there's hardly any water there in Dharmapuri district. And she with her sandals and, both of us, Renu and I have been watching her closely. And she's got 3 daughters and all of them. They're so closely and intrinsically involved in trying to uplift the lot of that particular district. It's a great story. And today at our age and time, when we spend so many years in uniform, and now in principal corporate life, where it's only the honesty of intention and the purity of passion that excites us, we both felt jointly that she's the right person to felicitate these wonderful ladies, a life of sacrifice that we heard today. So I'll request Dr. Soumya Anbumani to felicitate them.
Can we have another big round of applause for that amazing panel? And a big thank you to all of these wonderful women for sharing their insights with us. So ladies and gentlemen, we will now take a break for lunch and we will see everybody back here in 1 hour. Thank you so much.